Hey everybody, my name is Mark, and today I'm going to talk to you about a Chris Reeve Umnumzaan that was sent in by a viewer. All right, so this knife belongs to one of the viewers of the channel. His name is Larry Reynolds, and he sent four knives in to be looked at and kind of tuned and gone over. And so before I start, I just want to thank him. It takes a lot of trust to send, $1,200, $1,500 worth of hardware halfway across the country to someone that you don't know. So I really appreciate you doing that, and I'm going to do my best to tune these up and get them back to you as fast as I can. So this is a Chris Reeve Umnumzaan, and I have never handled one of these before. I've seen them, a lot, and I just, haven't picked one up. This is about a $500 knife, I guess, and it's a large knife. We're going to do size comparisons and everything else. I will say, just right out of the box, the blade finish on this is kind of incredible. So this is like a tumbled blade, and whatever tumble media they use, it's really fine. And so this is a super smooth, really nice blade. I do like the blade shape. It's got kind of a poon down there, and you can see that the top of the swedge has like vertical grind lines. So that's pretty cool. And I like this jimping. It's very fine, but it's spaced perfectly. And so it's aggressive enough to be useful, but it's not tearing anything up or anything like that. This knife is a user for Larry. He carries it quite a bit, and you can see from the evidence on the pocket clip and just the top of the scales here, this has had a lot of pocket time. So when he sent it in, I guess I forget which video that he had seen of mine, and it had to do with I think it was detent ramps. And so he was like, "Yeah, I've got a couple of knives, and I'd really like to, send them to you," which I was happy to accept, of course. The thing about this knife is, I don't believe it really needs one. This knife has a different detent system. And so instead of just a ceramic ball that's, stuck into a lock bar, this one actually has kind of a different looking ceramic ball basically, and it wraps over the edge and it provides the lockup on the blade. And so what you see here when you look at it and you see the lock bar there, there's not just a standard insert that's hitting against a lockup surface that's ground into the blade tang. This is, a little bit different. So I think this has, I'm sure it does, has the potential to be like a super smooth knife. The thing about it is the detent is so unbelievably strong right now that the knife, basically the blade just, it takes a lot of force to close this. Um, you know, it's kind of hard to move back and forth. And it's a combination of a really tight pivot and a whole lot of detent on this. So it's a little bit hard to judge because when you look at it, you can see, from looking at the top of the lock bar against the blade tang, you think that you're probably working with 60, 70% lockup, something like that. But actually, that's not the case. If you look closer inside, and it'll be kind of hard to see, but there's a little ball that sticks out vertically here on the end of that lock bar. And so that is not providing that kind of lockup percentage. It is definitely locking up correctly, and there is no blade play at all. But this knife just needs to be, taken apart and cleaned and lubricated and tuned up and everything else. Once that's done and I get it, moving freely, then we're going to evaluate if anything needs to be done with the blade tang and the lockup and all that. But personally, just looking at it, just when I got it, I haven't been inside this. I haven't, I'm just looking from the outside. Um, I think this is going to be a really smooth knife once it's tuned, and it's not going to need a detent ramp or anything like that. So, but we're going to see. So, as far as size comparisons, this is a Magna Cut blade, and it is a big boy. So, this whole thing, and I guess it's designed to be big. I guess I looked online, and Umnumzaan in Zulu means the boss. And, they're not kidding around. To the scale, it looks like probably 3 5/8. It looks like it's a little less than that as far as cutting edge. So you might be, I don't know, a little less than 3.5 inch cutting edge. The overall is just shy of 8.5. It's probably 8 3/8 or so. And this knife weighs, on my scale, it weighs 5.1 ounces. I think the internet has it listed as 5 ounces even, but I tried it several times and that's not what I was getting. So as far as size comparisons, we'll do a Dwayne Dwyer BB&M, which the pivots are going to be a little differently spaced, but that is a really close comparison. Those knives are pretty close to each other. The Dwayne Dwyer is a lot heavier, and I will say this runs on washers, I believe, and so does the Dwayne Dwyer. And so you can see how smooth I've gotten this, and I'm hoping to do the same thing with this. So we'll do another one. This is a this is an arc form theory, and the arc form is a little bit shorter, but not by much, and it's probably a little lighter. And then we'll do the old standby Spyderco Paramilitary 2. And that, again, is really close. It's probably the closest size comparison of all three. So, it's definitely a full-size knife. I will say the scales, these scales feel a little different. I think this is intended, like from the onset, to be a hard-use knife. And so it affords a lot of traction, not only in the milling, the crosshatch milling here, but just in the general way that it's finished. This isn't like a smooth knife, and it's not meant to be. I think if Chris Reeve wanted to make a smooth knife, he would have made it smooth. He obviously did on the blade, so he's perfectly capable of, putting different scale finishes and everything else on this titanium. But this knife is designed this way. It's designed to be a hard use, daily user EDC, and you can tell that's kind of the way the viewer uses this knife. And I say good on him. That's kind of baller to get a $500 knife or more, and just, everyday carry it and use the heck out of it. That's awesome. So that's just the way Chris Reeves intended. And that, I will say, the people in Idaho, I think, intended that also. So anyway, we're going to get into this now, and this is different hardware. So these are all hex. This is an 1/8 inch Allen or hex head, and this is 5/64 down here. So we're going to start taking this thing apart, and I'm going to start with a pocket clip. And I will say before we start, it's a little bit strange because the pocket clip is directly in line and resting against the lock bar. I kind of tested that when I got it because there is so much detent. That's not solely a function of this pocket clip resting on it. Even with this kind of relaxed, there is a lot of detent on this knife. And so we're going to adjust all that, and I'm going to smooth this out and just make it like butter. And we're going to get started right now. So I've got a pocket clip screw that's going to come out right here. And you can see the underside of that pocket clip. It's got a little wear up here still, but this is, pretty worn. And I will say it looks like, I can't tell if that kind of has been changed a little bit. Maybe, pressed in or something like that. If I need to adjust it, because it does seem like it's got like a little arc here. And so, in an effort to decrease this detent and tune this out, I may end up changing this a little bit. It's still going to rest fully against the lock bar, but not put tension on it when I'm done. So we got that. And then we've got a couple more body screws that look like they both go through the backspacer here. And so we're going to take these out. And I almost need to get my ratchet out here, because this is kind of a long-winded, I guess this is a barrel screw. Yeah, so that's a barrel coming out. I'm going to try this side and see if this is the interior threaded part. And it is. So that was just about to come out there. And that looks like a very American style screw. It's got kind of a shoulder that's, you know, relieved there. And it is kind of a button head, so it's got a slight curve to it. Good looking screw. Good looking screw. So we're going to try it again from this side. And that's much better. So these were definitely put in to come apart from the show side. But since you can't really tell, it could go either way. So let's see. I may have to push these out with kind of a little drift pin. Which we can try. No. So I'm going to leave those in, and when I take the scale off, it's going to be a lot easier to get those out, because they will come out definitely, but they're pressed in there pretty tough, pretty hard. So now we're going to do this one, and this is an 1/8 inch, and I have no idea if this is captured in any way or anything like that. It does kind of slip all the way down in there. And I've got something rattling. What is this? I don't know. All right, so it looks like this is not captured. So I'm going to get a backer on that. And that means we're going to put this blade away. And I have another one right here because I was thinking that might be the case. So we're going to put that in there as a backer, and we're going to put this in there, and now we're going to take this pivot out. Here we go. So this is going to come apart fairly strangely. I'm going to kind of clamp this together. Yep. Okay, so there's a little bit of rust in there. That actually wanted to come apart from the show side. And since these, I'm probably going to put it together differently. So it comes apart because they look essentially the same on the outside. And since it's not captured or anything, I'm going to put it together where the barrel of the pivot goes in on the show side, and then the actual pivot screw goes in there from the lock side, because I like building from the lock side. We're kind of starting from the show side, I guess. So yeah, that has definitely seen some pocket time, and it is time for a cleaning. And you can see there's quite a bit of rust and all kinds of stuff under here. And so that is awesome to see, because this, like I said, it's a user. But it also makes me wonder what these washers are going to look like, because again, this is running on phosphor bronze, I believe. And this blade just wants to come right out. And so, yeah, this is cool. This is going to be amazing. All right, so that is the phosphor bronze washer, and you can see that it's got holes in it, and those holes are designed to hold grease, and it specifically said grease, which is handy because I have the very best grease that you can buy and put on a knife. So I've been swearing by it for a couple of months now, and that's what this is going to go back with. So that's going to be fantastic. So we're going to take that washer off there and kind of take a look at it. And it looks like, yeah. So it's kind of weird because I don't know if it's rough just from use. I mean, it did have grease in there, but it doesn't feel like as smooth as I would think, or as smooth as I'm going to have it here in just a little bit, because we're going to dress these. But you can see marks on it from where the blade has been kind of moving on it. You can see circular marks in between those holes. And so there's been a lot of wear on that washer, which again is fantastic to see. I really kind of dig it when, knives are actually used. And this is obviously like an EDC, and it's still hanging in there. It just needed a tune-up, Relubrication, tune-up, smoothing out. It's going to be awesome. So I've got a little bit of like crusty buildup there at the top of that hole. And so that's where that one screw came out of that was rusted. So we're going to be cleaning all that up. And other than that, there is no, this is a pretty thick scale. I think that's 150 thousandths, which is just like shear grout, basically. So, yeah, that's 150. And so that's a pretty heavy scale, and it's heavy to not have any internal milling or anything like that. And this milling on the outside, it does definitely afford, some grip and everything else, but it's not super deep. So, they didn't care about weight reduction. But it's a hard use knife, and it's made for people with like large hands and wearing gloves and things like that. And, so a little ounce or two here and there is not really a consideration. So you can see how much detent is on that lock bar. And I'm going to clean this up, and we're going to take a really close look at that whole assembly. I'm going to get this back spacer off of these barrel spacers, basically. And we're going to take a look at that too. Whoops. So this has like really aggressive jimping, and that will keep it in the palm of your hand. It kind of sticks out past the back of the scale, and so that's a lanyard loop or lanyard oblong hole there. So that's pretty cool, and this is definitely titanium. Yeah, looks pretty good. It's kind of stone wash or whatever. So these are going to press out now, and these look like they're in pretty good shape. That's a very shiny, milled machine surface. And we've got this one, which is probably going to need a little coaxing because it's been in place so long. And we're going to do that coaxing with this one. And again, this is 5/64 hex. So we're going to get this one moving a little bit and get it out of there. And you can see that it's got some wear on it, and it's been in place for a while. So I don't know, there's no real reason to kind of smooth this out because it's just like a body screw, and it feels smooth. It's just got some lines on it from where it's been in place. So I think those are probably going to be fine and not need to be kind of reworked or anything. And then I'm going to clean this up, and we're going to take a look at this lockup area, because I think this is where all the magic happens. And it is. So basically what they've done is they've taken a really large ceramic ball and then just pressed it in at kind of a 45, and that acts as a detent ball, and a lockup. So they don't have to worry about, putting a steel machined surface in here at the end of this lock bar, either by way of insert or whatever, for the blade tang to lock up against. It's just locking up on this, kind of large ceramic bead there. And so that is really cool, actually. You can see where they kind of press this in. They've got little points next to it, and those are just to create pressure. So they had that milled out just so, and then they put that ceramic ball in there, and then they come in, and that wasn't, I'm sure, done by hand. That was a machine that came in, and you just put little dimples next to it, and it expands the metal enough to hold that ball. And it's obviously doing a really good job because this is a heavy use, EDC, and nothing's happened to it. So that's really interesting. That's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. So because of that, there's no real polishing or anything to do up here. And because it is virtually like you cannot get a detent ball closer to a blade tang than this. And so it kind of solves the problem with, breaking the blade over when you relieve the tension on the lock bar, which, takes like 2 hands on this knife. So you do that, and then you break the blade over a certain point where the detent ball is ready to climb up on the blade tang. This one, as soon as you move this out of the way and move the blade at all, it's on top of the blade tang. And so that's kind of the reason why when I was messing with this before I opened it up, that I couldn't see the need for any kind of blade ramp or anything else because it was already so close. That tolerance is just like, it's all over that blade tang. Okay, so basically the way this works is this over travel stop is pressed into this titanium scale at the factory, and it's not meant to be adjusted. So what they say is that if you want this knife evaluated for preload and the lock bar and things like that, you basically send this back to Chris Reeve. I don't know about that. So I can tell that because this runs on washers, it means that the blade is sitting really close to this scale. And so that from looking at it, before I took it apart, this little ceramic ball, which is the lockup against the blade tang, it was sitting basically right in the center, maybe just off center of the blade tang completely. And the way this blade tang is, it's got an angle just like every other. And so you can kind of see actually on the lockup how far that ceramic ball was coming in and locking up. And so I believe that I can adjust this, and it's pretty easy to put the preload back in because you're bending, away from this over travel stop. But I'm going to take a little bit of this out because I would want this knife to be a lot smoother and easier opening than it is. And I'm going to pause the video while I do it because it's going to be off camera. And then I'm going to come back and show. And you can see there's already lines on this because that's where the pocket clip rides. And so the way I'm going to do this, I'm not going to, damage this in any way or put any kind of marks on the, anything at all. Everything's going to be protected. But that's kind of where that pocket clip sits. And that's right on top of all those little marks that are kind of on the lock bar. And so I just want to show like all those are there already. I'm not going to do any of those. I'm going to be really careful with what I do. And so I'm going to do that now, and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is what we did. Like I was saying, there is no way that this lock bar is supposed to be that putting that much lateral tension on that blade. There's just no way. I don't know what exactly happened to this, but with this over travel stop in there, you just couldn't move this. So I went ahead and took the over travel stop out. So basically what I did was I protected the scales right here, and all these scratches were here. and I already kind of documented that. So this was like that when I received it. But I protected these and I set it here on the edge of this little tray, and I just tapped it. And that over travel stop came right out. So I had read real quick that this was held in place with Loctite and all kinds of stuff. It's not. I heated it up on the inside. I just sat, held the point of a soldering iron right there, and I heated it up. Um, and when I gave it a tap, it came out. But this is not held in place with Loctite or anything. This is a different kind of metal. It feels like aluminum, possibly. And so that's how we can do that. So basically, now that that's done, I can tune this however I want, and all I have to watch is lock up, and that's about it. The pivot is going to dictate blade play, but I do have to still watch like for lock rock or whatever, which we're going to do. So I just was not going to give up. If this is a viewer's knife, and that's great, and I'm glad they sent it to me. But if this was my knife, there's no way that I would have been satisfied with the action that was on that knife. That was just ridiculously stiff, and I wouldn't have put up with that for a second, you know. So anyway, that's kind of what we're doing. So now that I've got that, I can go ahead and adjust this lock bar anywhere I want. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust it kind of the way that I wanted to in the very beginning. So we're going to put that basically right there. And we're going to see what that does. And I can test this and everything without putting this over travel stop back in there. So once I get it where I want it, I'll drive that back in there. And we'll kind of go from there. So I believe that the lubrication and everything on these, it's just the way I would do any kind of, washer pivot. So, I haven't done anything differently or anything like that. So that part should still work. It was all this detent bar, which was incredibly stiff. So we're going to put this pivot screw back in there. And we should be back on the road, hopefully. And I may have to put some back, but now that that over travel stop is out, I can adjust that lock bar anywhere I want. So this is essentially just like any other knife now, which it should have been in the very beginning. So I'm going to put this, should be 5/64. And I'm going to put a couple of these body screws back in just for tuning. And actually just one's all I need. So we're going to go with that. And the pivot is still, that is so much better. Yeah, that's what it needed. And there is that blade is solid as a rock. Okay, so there is no lock rock or side to side or anything like that. That is a very solid lockup, and the detent bar or the lock bar is much easier to manipulate now, and we're well on our way. This one needs a little help because it's the one where that rusty pivot screw was. And everything else feels really good and looks really good. So we're going to clean this up. And this is just going to be kind of scrubbing it with an alcohol pad and see what that does. I'm just going to use this to kind of get in here. And I will say this is actually like it's a really big ridge kind of that's built up in there. I don't think that's a rough edge that's left from the factory. I don't believe. I want to say that's just from that rusty. Yeah, because it's starting to come out. You can see these white flakes that just popped out of here. So those are, in fact, just kind of debris that's in there. But I need something that doesn't really bend, that has some kind of ridges on it or something. So what is that going to be? It's going to be this, because that's nice and plastic, so it's not going to do anything, but it's going to clean this ridge out of here. It's almost like cleaning the bolt on an AR. So yeah, that's coming out. I just need like a straight edge that won't mar this titanium finish. Yep. Okay. There we go. All right, so that looks better. And I got quite a bit of stuff out of there. So now we're gonna clean it again one more time, because I want that clean. And it is. So now you can see there's no more ridge left around the top of that, and it's back to just titanium. And that's what we wanted. So that looks good. Okay, so we got that. And we got a big mess. And that's what we're doing. Okay, so now we're gonna go, there's a couple of things left. We're gonna do the washers, which one of those is stuck down here in its grease. So we're going to clean up the blade tang real good. And that, I gotta say, is super smooth. So that looks good. And yeah, that's incredibly smooth. That feels great. All except for that M right there. Which I gotta say, you know, Mark, this could be my knife. I noticed this point on the end of this blade, and it almost made me wonder if it was like supposed to be a front flipper or something. It's probably not, because the action didn't really lend itself to front flipping whatsoever. Okay, so we got the blade clean, and that's going to be good to go. We have some stuff to do on this pivot. This pivot right here, we're going to clean, because it's just kind of scratched and it's seen some use. This other one is really rusty and pitted all the way around underneath. And so that's going to be kind of a trip. So we're going to clean this, and I'm just going to soak it with this alcohol, and then we're going to scrape it with that little gun cleaning hook that I've got over there. So we're going to put this in here and just kind of work it, and we're going to see how much of this will just kind of come off like this, which is actually quite a bit. So you can kind of see the amount of rust that we're getting and the kind of debris that's left under there. I don't know if this was Loctite at one time and it was way too much Loctite, and so it kind of spilled out underneath the head of the pivot screw. That could be. So we're going to grab this and set it on this towel and just kind of scrape Let's see how clean we can get this. And that's actually flaking off. Yeah, that's working. Then we'll hit it with another alcohol pad or two. And I think that's going to clean up. It's just kind of chunky under there. I need something a little more like stiff to get down in there. Okay, that looks better. So let's see. Yeah, there's like all kinds of little flaky crap that's coming out of there. All right, and we're going to put this here because we're going to be using it for those washers. So I'm going to grab another alcohol swab and do that same thing again with that bit driver and kind of twist it in there and see how much more of this I can get out, because that was working. Yep. All right, so no more rust. There is kind of a chunk still there hanging on the side. I think I got two. So we got one right here that just popped off. And then that big one right there. Yep. Okay. So that is now clean. So we're good to go. This is fun. Okay. So now I'm going to polish this pivot up a little bit, because like the rest of this knife, it has seen some use. Yell. And now that is back super smooth, so that's going to make a huge difference. That actually feels really good, and it feels so good that I want to buff it to a high polish, just like this. Okay. Oh yeah. That's so slick you can barely keep it in your hand. Yeah, that's really slick now. Okay, so that made a huge difference. All right, so now we got these weird little washers. And what we're gonna do is, I'm just gonna polish these on this block right here. These are thin and they're razor sharp, and so we're not gonna remove material so much as just kind of polish them up. So I need these to be kind of dry. So I'm going to kind of dry them with this rag and alcohol. So we're going to clean them up and get all this old grease or whatever that's on here off of here. and then we're going to polish them. It's kind of interesting to see what knife manufacturers come up with as far as, you know, innovative ideas and things like that. These washers definitely qualify. You know, they're probably not like any other washers on any other knife. And, you know, Chris Reeve was like, this is what we're doing. And there's got to be a reason, you know, why they decided on this design. Like I said, I've never had one of these. It's a nice looking knife, but when I received this one, it's kind of like that shear grub I did the other day for that other viewer. When I got it, you couldn't even use a flipper. Like, it was crazy. And I was like, okay, is this really, you know, is shear grub just another knife, you know, like any other, and no better, no worse, or whatever? But then I cleaned it up and I got it back to stock, and then I could see. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand what's going on now. And I kind of think that's going to happen with this knife, because when I got this knife, you could barely open and close it. Like, it was that rough. Just tremendously hard to operate. And so the same thing, I was like, man, I've heard about these knives forever. Is this representative of, you know, what these knives are? But I think it's just, you know, it was probably smooth as hell when they first got it. Or maybe not, you know, maybe they are stiff just out of the box, and you're supposed to just use it and use it and use it and put up with it like that until you finally get it worn in, and then it's kind of smooth or something. I don't know. But that didn't happen with this knife, because it was incredibly stiff and hard to operate when, you know, it got to me. And so I think this is going to be like that shear graph. I think it's going to tune up and end up being super smooth. At least I hope so. The other knives that this viewer sent in, it's he's got 2 iron steels. He's got a rock and a Quattro, and then he's got another one. It's a ZT, and those are going to be fun. He's got another, I think the rock has a detent that's just like this, like it's incredibly stiff. But the other 2, one's a plunge lock, and so that's a little weird. But that Quattro is probably going to tune up. It's the closest of all of these to being, you know, in really smooth shape, you know. I will say I think that one does need a detent ramp, and so it's probably going to get one. This one probably will not. Okay. So that is smoothed out, and you can still see some lines. I didn't, you know, sand this or anything. All I did was kind of polish it, but it is, you know, a lot smoother. So that's kind of what we're doing. And so I'm going to polish this other one real quick, and then we're going to lube this thing up and put it back together and see what it does. I really hope this turns out. Okay, so those are the washers. I'm not doing anything to this blade tang because it's incredibly smooth, and so it doesn't really need it. And I did another knife like that here recently where I was just like, you know what, this doesn't need a thing. This is as smooth as, you know, anything that I would do to it. You can see that the wear is kind of uneven on this. It feels like it's kind of weighted back on the back side of the blade tang, and the front, it wasn't rubbing or digging in, I guess, quite as much. So that was a little strange. And this one's a lot more even. So that's cool. And there's a jerk on a motorcycle outside. Okay. So this looks like it's okay inside. I don't really see anything. There is a little bit, actually. A little something. And that surface was actually what was causing it was caught under here. And where those two kind of made it up. And so this has a little on this kind of chamfer. All right. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put this back together. And some of this hardware is going to be in a different position because I'm going to build it up from the show side. And we're going to see if that's possible. So that's going to go in there just like that and get pressed in. And so now what we're going to do, and I'm much more enthused about this because I think it's actually going to work, is we're going to put this pivot barrel back in. And I'm going to lubricate this like I normally would if I didn't read that these holes were meant to trap grease in. So I'm going to use some KPL, and I'm going to just put a little boundary layer again on that washer. And I think the dark that I saw was just from it being used so much. You know, that was like old lubrication that had built up in these holes. Because this is the way I want it now. And that's going to be awesome. So we're putting that back up here where everybody can see. So that is lubricated. And we're going to place this blade. Nope. Actually, I want to hit this with a little grease on the pivot because that's where it should be going. So we're going to do that. Okay. And then we're going to place this blade on here. And then we're going to lightly oil this other washer. And this should be it. This should be perfect. And then we're probably going to end up having Loctite, which it looked like there was. I don't know what exactly was going on with that, but it should have had some Loctite in it. And we're going to end up doing that after we figure out where that pivot wants to be. And I think it's going to want to be kind of loose. Almost to the point of, you know, some kind of blade play. And then again, just dial it back a little. And then work what you got. Come on. So we're putting this back. There we go. Till it just touches. And then I'm going to go ahead and put one of these body screws in. Just like that. All right, so now we're going to see what this thing will really do. Yeah. So there's still no blade play or lock rock or anything like that. And now it's just going to be pivot. And this pivot is a little tight. That is a solid, I got a little side to side. So there is no lock rock. So that tells me that, yeah, that's the way it should be right there. That feels great. That feels awesome. And then I've got good deployment, and this is super smooth. I've got blade centering, which is right there, you can see. So this is great. So the only thing I need to do is tighten that pivot up just a hair. And those are coarse threads, and it's a washer system, so it doesn't take much to do all of that. So I can't defeat the detent. I don't believe. Nope. So that looks good. Yeah, this is the way it should be. Okay. So now I got to figure out, because I've got it. This feels great. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to increase this detent just a hair, because I've got it kind of, basically to a single, shake shut, basically. This is so much better. This is a knife I would want to carry, but I want a little bit more detent in here, just a hair. And then I'm going to put a little more tension on that pivot. So this is finally working out. So I'm going to have to watch really close how I adjust this detent, because I don't want to put too much in there, but I need to put just a hair, not much. And I wish I had a good way. So basically, okay, I think I found something. So if you look at the inside of the scale right here at the pivot, right? So this flat right there, and you compare it to how much of this detent ball you can actually see. You can see that it's shaved off, and you can't quite see the entire pivot ball, but almost, you can almost see it all. So I'm going to increase this detent until you can just see the other side of that detent ball. And I think that's going to be enough. So it's not going to be much. I'll be a little more than that. Okay, that's it. So now I can see, that might be, no, I don't think that's too much. So now I can see the entire pivot ball right there, just looking down. So that's it. So that's what we want. These washers are lubricated just right, so we're not doing anything with that. Okay. So we're putting that back. Okay. And then we're putting a body screw back. And I feel pretty good about this. So I'm going to go ahead and put the pocket clip back on and put it totally together. I want to make sure, yep, got blade centering. And I got a screw that's going away. So we're going to put this other screw back in here. Just like this. So we got screws. And that means these are tight. So what I need to do is figure out if this is going to put too much tension on that. And I don't believe it is. It may make it harder to manipulate that lock bar, so I might have to adjust this, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in place for tuning and flipping. So we're going to do that. And how does that feel? Yeah, that's not bad. All right. So this pivot's kind of tight. I'm going to loosen that up. Okay, so now we're back tight. So is it this pocket clip? I'm going to take it off. And we're going to try it without it. No. So let's see. That's a rock solid blade. I'm going to try it from this side. Okay, so now I'm going to bring it in. I got a little blade play, but no lock rock, so I think the D10 is good. We're getting really close. Oops. Okay, so that is rock solid. So it's like a little less than that. That's it. That is it. There is no blade play, side to side, no lock rock. That is completely solid. The lock bar is easy to actuate now, so I can move that out of the way, break the blade over. That's it. Okay. So now we know it can be done. So what I need to do now is, I'm not convinced that there's two things. I got to put this pocket clip back on there, but make sure that it's not putting any undue tension on that lock bar, because the lock bar needs to be adjusted, in just the right way. And so I might have to adjust this pocket clip just a bit. It needs to touch it, and it can't rattle or anything like that. That's close. I think it might have been the pivot. that added a little bit. So that's still solid. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so that pivot's moving. Yep. Okay, so we got that. So the only thing we got left, I want to make sure, because that is touching. Yep. All right. So now I'm going to put this over travel stop back in. And I'm going to tap it in. And we're going to straighten it out just like that. Yep. And so that just needs a little tap. So I'm going to do that. Oh, my hands are kind of oily now. Come on. There we go. I can get it. They are smooth. That's why they put these little rubber O-rings on there, because they're super smooth. Thumb studs, or actually they're blade stop pins that are acting as thumb studs. But that's it. That is unbelievably smooth. Okay, so that's what we're going with. I'm going to tap this in. Yep. So I'm going to grab this pin. This is what I drift sights with. So that's going to be perfect right there. And I can actually watch this because this is not going to mar the surface at all. And I think I want it just a hair more. Yep. But I've still got like smooth action. And now that my thumbs don't have any oil all over them. Yeah. So it's kind of like I was thinking, because it's washers, I'm not going to be able to get like a fluid hydraulic shut kind of thing, but I can get it smooth. And so that's where we're at now. So this is going to get loud again. Okay. So now that over travel stop is fully seated, and it looks just the way it did before. And we've got excellent deployment. We have no blade play. We have no lock rock. We have no detent lash. And we have a smooth blade. So that's it. All right. So the last thing I'm doing is we're going to Loctite this. Ugh. And then I'm going to leave it alone. And actually, before I do this, I'm going to take a little video for the owner. And it's going to be kind of right here, showing him the action and kind of explaining what I did. And so I'm going to do that real quick. So 2 seconds. All right. So the last thing we're going to do to this knife is we're going to Loctite that pivot. because I adjusted this, and after flipping it several times, it seemed like it tightened up a little bit. So I think that pivot might be walking a little bit or tightening up or whatever. And so I'm going to pull that pivot screw, and we're going to Loctite it. And then once I get it adjusted, we're just going to kind of leave it alone for a day and then kind of see what happens. So this was kind of interesting. It was a washer system, and I know going into it that I'm not going to be able to get it like a bearing system, but you can still get them really smooth. This one, that that lock bar was just like ridiculous. And so we drove that over travel stop out, and then you can adjust the lock bar however you want and get it, smooth like we did, and then just put that right back in there, and just a couple of taps, basically. It's just press fit in there, but it's in there good. It's not going to come out or anything like that. And that's kind of how we did it. So I'm actually really happy with the way this knife turned out. And now it kind of makes me want one. So I'm going to put some Loctite in here. Just like this. And we're going to coat all the way down those threads, just like that. And then that should be good. And then we're going to run the screw back in there. And we're going to tune it one last time. And then, like I said, just kind of let it sit for a day. Let that Loctite kind of firm up. So we're going to check for, wow, that's perfect. So this is a solid blade. And yeah, I'm not touching it. So that is the way that needs to be. I got blade centering. This is smooth. This is a knife that I'd love to carry, actually. So that is a viewer's Chris Reeves Umnumzaan, and we smoothed it right out. So total success, and thanks very much for watching. I appreciate it.